Welcome to the Midwestern Regional Climate Center's Vegetative Impact Program's Frost Freeze Guidance Training webinar intended for the National Weather Service. I'm Beth Hall, Director of the MRCC, and I'm here with Molly Willison, MRCC's Extension and Outreach Climatologist. The intent of this webinar is to help users learn more about the Frost Freeze Project and how to help better monitor their surrounding environment for the potential risk and susceptibility of frost freeze damage to plants. In addition, this particular webinar is designed for the National Weather Service forecasters to better coordinate and communicate when to issue freeze-related forecast headlines depending upon surrounding plant growth conditions. What is the Frost Freeze Guidance Project? Well, the MRCC is excited to be able to provide a forum for stakeholders to discuss the state of vegetation and its susceptibility to potentially damaging low air temperatures. The Frost Freeze Project is actually part of a larger initiative from the MRCC called the Vegetation Impact Program, or VIP. The VIP includes the same collaborators as the Frost Freeze Guidance Project. Its mission is to provide the best possible climatological resources for stakeholders to continually monitor and understand the state of the vegetation climate environment. Other VIP projects include online tools to monitor stress degree days, the Keach-Byram Drought Index, and chilling units. We hope that VIP will continue to expand based upon the needs and demands of the vegetation community across the nation. Freeze events can cause devastating impacts on local vegetation during the growing season. The freezes of 2007 and 2012 are examples of such events. Forecasters want to issue freeze headlines to warn the public of a potential freeze event. However, when to start and stop issuing these headlines throughout the year are often a challenge. The environment needs to warrant these alerts, and without expert input on the state of plants and their vulnerability to freeze events, the headlines aren't as valuable. While forecasters could use climatologically determined dates for when the first or last potentially damaging freeze of a growing season occurs, differences in weather, farming practices, and phenological response from one season to the next can play a large role in the timing of freeze susceptibility. Extreme or unusual seasons can be particularly dangerous because the weather may not always conform well to the climatological dates of first or last freeze. The MRCC has been monitoring freeze events in the fall and spring for several years. However, there was still a need to communicate the vulnerability of local plants to potential freeze events with the issuance of freeze awareness headlines. Therefore, an email listserv was established as a way to communicate between all project participants on the status of their local vegetation climate environment. The MRCC also developed a number of operational products, including graphs, static maps, and GIS map web applications on a website to help monitor the environment. And finally, since one of the main goals of this project is to receive guidance from Weather Service offices and local contributors, a guidance input form was created. This form is a place where project members can provide information about their area to help guide whether or not freeze lines should be issued if a freeze event looks imminent. Online impact forms were also developed where project members can provide impact information after a damaging freeze. We're going to explore these resources and how to fill out these forms in the second half of the webinar in just a few minutes. This project has two main member groups, the National Weather Service, which we'll talk about shortly, but also local contributors, which include university extension specialists, climatologists, horticulture growers, farmers, plant enthusiasts, and other vegetation experts like master gardeners. The role of the local contributor is to provide insight as to whether or not vegetation in their geographic area would currently be vulnerable to freezing temperatures. They do this by indicating yes, no, or maybe for whether a frost freeze headline would be needed if low temperatures are in the forecast. They would update these guidance forms as conditions change throughout the year. Another component to the role of the local contributor is to provide expert information not typically known outside of the vegetation community, such as which critical temperatures relate to which vegetation. This slideshow shows a few examples of great local contributor involvement from spring 2013. This report from Mark Longstroth, a Michigan State Extension Specialist, indicates that fruit trees were blooming and will be damaged by temperatures below 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Noting that critical temperatures of 28 degrees is very important information and typically not known by those outside of the vegetation community. Another example was issued several days later when Mark provided the listserv with a table showing the average bloom dates for the last 29 years in southwest Michigan for various fruit types. The response from this information showed support from the National Weather Service. For example, this quote saying, "This is great data. I'd love to see more ag-based input like this. Thanks." So for forecasting participants, what is the role of the National Weather Service? The main goal of this project was to increase communication and knowledge among not only Weather Service offices, but also local contributors. Therefore, one of the roles of the National Weather Service is to use the resources available, such as the climate monitoring maps and guidance input from local contributors, and National Weather Service offices to help determine whether frost freeze headlines are needed in one zone county warning area. Once the Weather Service office decides whether or not to start or stop issuing headlines for a season, the goal is to communicate this decision via the online guidance form in order to best coordinate with neighboring offices. It is important to update these guidance forms as needed to keep the information as current as possible. This first example from last fall from a Weather Service contributor in Grand Rapids, Michigan, indicating that his office has begun its annual frost freeze warning program effective May 6th. He indicated that this decision was made because it is their understanding that many fruit-bearing vegetation are beginning to blossom, which is considering the great local information supplied by the Southwest Michigan local contributors. This next example is another one showing great local information from the Kansas City office, indicating that they will be issuing freeze advisories because many of the farmers had begun planting over the past week. The posting also indicates that flowering trees have mostly leafed out, so that is no longer an issue for most of the CWA, except maybe the extreme northern part. There has been some confusion as to what we are actually asking for here, so I want to take this slide to just clarify what are the guidance categories. What do they mean? First of all, we are not asking anyone to submit a form every single time your office issues a frost freeze headline. What we are asking you to submit is information on the intent of your office in issuing a freeze or frost headline if conditions present themselves in terms of freezing temperatures. So why participate in this project? What are the benefits of participating? Forecasters want their forecast to be the most beneficial to their audience. In terms of frost freeze impacts on vegetation, forecasters need to know if the environment is at a point where freeze could cause damage. For example, if there is little to no growth in an area, a freeze event will have little impact. On the other hand, if plants are at a stage where a freeze could cause considerable damage, then knowing this in order to give as much advance notice to farmers and growers is desirable. The more advanced notice of a freeze event, the more potential for some preventative action. The forecasts become more stakeholder-driven this way with a goal of minimizing impacts as much as possible. It's very simple to subscribe to this project. Simply send an email to listserv@listserv.illinois.edu, and in the body of that email type subscribe freeze list and then your full name as shown in the example. Everything is free and the information is restricted to subscribers only. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Molly, who's going to actually take a real-time tour of the site to explain how to use the tools.
Great, thank you. Let me open up the web page here. Okay, so as Beth said, I'm going to give you a tour of the Frost Freeze Guidance web page. And just as a precursor, the focus of this website tour today is really to give you a better understanding of how to submit guidance forms and how to use some of the different tools that are available to make decisions for frost freeze headlines. I'm not going to have enough time today to show you all of the products and tools on the website, so I do encourage you to take some time and explore what is available. If you have any questions on the content, you can always send us an email. So this is the main Vegetation Impact Program, or VIP webpage. And from this page, you can either access the Frost Freeze Guidance Project through the top menu bar or under Current Products. So there's just a few things I wanted to show you here on the main page before jumping into the forms. First is the About button, which is on the top right of the page. So on the About page, this is where you can find specific information about the project, like how to subscribe to the project, or what exactly it means when you're submitting a yes, maybe, or no for guidance. This is a page that you can reference to get information about the project at any point, or if you want to share information about this project with someone else. Secondly, I also wanted to show you the training webpage, which also has an icon on the top right. So this page has information regarding upcoming trainings like the one that we're having today. Also, we will post the recording of this training on this webpage as well. And finally, if you scroll to the bottom, the Frost Freeze Guidance Project brochure is available in PDF form. So this is something that you could reference or print and pass along to others. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the main Frost Freeze Guidance page, and we are going to start by going through the guidance forms, which can be found here on the top left of the page where it says Guidance Impact Forms. Now, as a member of the project, you just have to log in with your last name and email. And if you are a member of the listserv, you should already be entered. If you have issues, though, you can, of course, email us. Okay, so once you're on this page, you have the option to either enter a form or view reports. And we'll come back to view reports in a little bit. So let's start by entering a form by pressing Go. So there are two different types of forms. We have the Freeze Advisory Guidance Form and the Freeze Impact Report. The Freeze Impact Report is the form you fill out if there have been damaging impacts after a freeze event in your area. The Freeze Advisory Guidance is the form you fill out to convey to neighboring offices your intent on issuing frost freeze headlines. So let's go ahead and start with that one. You can either choose your counties by state, by crop reporting districts, by crop reporting district, or by National Weather Service county warning area. Let's go ahead and choose by CWA today and for Gaylord, Michigan. Okay, so the top left of the page is where you enter your guidance. So before I start describing what yes, no, and maybe mean as guidance, I once again want to go back to the confusion that sometimes is around exactly what these guidance descriptions mean. So as Beth said, we are not asking you to submit a form every time your office issues a frost freeze headline for imminent freezing temperatures. What we are asking you to do is to submit the information on the intent of your office in issuing these frost freeze headlines if the conditions present themselves. So with that in mind, a guidance of no means that your office does not intend to issue a freeze advisory even if freezing temperatures are in the forecast. A guidance of maybe indicates that if freezing temperatures are in the forecast, your office may issue freeze advisories depending upon the type and extent of vegetative risk. And finally, a guidance of yes means that your office intends to issue freeze advisories if conditions present themselves for freezing temperatures because most of the vegetation in your area is susceptible. So after making your selection of yes, no, or maybe, you can enter rationale. So for example, vegetation has started blooming and would be damaged if a freeze occurred. So after you've submitted your rationale, you should select the counties that you would like to enter this guidance for. If it's your whole CWA, you can select Check All. Or if you want to manually select the counties, we are going to have a new interactive county selector tool that hopefully will be launched very soon. I'm just going to show you the test page for this new county selector tool just to give you an idea of what it will look like. So in order to use the interactive county selector tool, you'll be able to click on this map on the right, and it's going to pop up a GIS interactive map where you can select the counties manually. And if you see, as you select them, they start to be listed on the left of the page. And once you are done, you can click Done, and this information is automatically transferred back to the main guidance form. So hopefully this information or this guidance, the county selector will be available sometime, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. So going back to the form we were working on, the information on the bottom should be filled out for you specifically, so you should not have to change anything. And once you are done, you click Submit Guidance Form. So where does this information go once you fill it out? Well, for those that have been a member of the project for a while, you know that historically an email was sent out to the listserv every time a guidance form was submitted. Since the number of emails were getting overwhelming for some, we have actually stopped this, and we are working on a different solution. We hope that in the near future that when you submit a guidance form, your form will be sent to yourself as well as all members in surrounding CWAs. This means that you will only get guidance forms from surrounding county boarding areas, which will hopefully help to increase the coordination with neighboring offices as well as reduce the number of emails. Guidance form information is also transferred onto our static and GIS maps, which can be accessed from the home page. Let's first look at the static maps, which are here in the center under Freeze Maps. The third section is called the Freeze Advisory Status Map, and we have two different types, one based on National Weather Service input, and the other that's based on local contributor guidance. So as National Weather Service members, your guidance form information will be transferred onto the National Weather Service status map. You can find information on what neighboring offices intend to do for freeze advisories by using this map as well. The gray shade represents areas in which freeze advisories will not be issued by National Weather Service, which right now makes up a majority of the country since these conditions are reflecting the end of the fall season. The blue color shows areas that may have a freeze advisory issued should freezing temperatures be in the forecast. And finally, green is showing where freeze advisories will be issued once again if conditions present themselves for freezing temperatures. These maps are updated every 30 minutes, so it is real-time information, and the time that it was last updated is listed on the top left of the map. The second freeze advisory map is the one based on non-National Weather Service input. So this is where information from our local contributors like Extension, local growers and farmers, climatologists, and other vegetation experts will be reflected. So if you're looking for information on whether there is any vegetation susceptible to freezing temperatures, then this is the map to reference. On this map, gray areas shows counties where vegetation is not susceptible or vulnerable even if freezing temperatures were in the forecast. Blue shows where vegetation may be susceptible, and green shows where vegetation definitely would be susceptible to freezing temperatures. Just a few quick notes. On these national maps, you can always click on an area and zoom in to see more detail. Also, the shading on these maps for the guidance forms reflects how long ago the guidance form was submitted. So with the dense dots on this map, you can see that these forms were submitted over a week ago, and these were actually submitted last fall. So if you want to get specific information like that on exactly when the last guidance form was submitted for your area, you can use the interactive GIS tool, which is on the main page of the Frost Freeze Guidance webpage. There's a button here on the top right that says GIS Freeze Map Interface. And when you open it, you'll see that the map looks very similar to the map that we were just looking at on the previous page. Let me zoom in here just a little bit. Okay, so the main difference or the added features of this tool is that you can select a county and information comes over in the box on the right that shows you the latest guidance forms for this county. By selecting more information, it brings you up to a new window that shows the latest guidance. In this case, it was submitted back in October by Mark Longstraw. If you want to look at all of the guidance reports for this county, you can click View Input History, and this opens it up to the historical record for this county in Michigan. So just as a note, it's important for interoffice communication that guidance forms are updated continually throughout the season when the intent of your office changes in terms of issuing frost freeze headlines. Once again, this does not mean submitting a form every time your office issues a freeze advisory. Instead, you should update your guidance form when the decision has changed on whether your office is going to issue freeze advisories if there are freezing temperatures. So for example, let's say right now that your office is not going to issue freeze headlines because no vegetation is susceptible. But maybe in 2 weeks these conditions change, warranting the need for advisory should freezing temperatures be in the forecast. Therefore, this would reflect the time that you would want to change your office's guidance from no to yes. Keeping this information up to date is an important part of making this project useful to you and other National Weather Service offices. So real quickly, I wanted to walk you through filling out an impact form. Once again, going to the main Frost Freeze guidance page and guidance impact forms. So the freeze impact report is one that you would fill out if there are any damaging impacts from a freeze event. So if you select Go and then Freeze Impact Report, and let's once again select by county warning area. So this form gives you the option to describe the freeze impact, to make note of the date that it occurred, as well as the date that the impact was noted. You can also fill in the value of losses. This is an optional field, so if you don't have that information or don't want to provide it, that's fine. And then also the county's selector is available on the right as well. So after everything is filled out for the impact form, once you press Submit, this information is transferred then to our interactive impact map using GIS. So once it loads, we'll see that Central Illinois has one impact reported. If we turn on the legend, you can see that the colors of the counties determine or show you how many impacts are reported for that county. Once again, by selecting a specific county, more information comes up that you can look at the last impact report. If you wanted to look at all impacts for that county, you select View All Impacts, and it opens it up to a separate web page. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to show you from the main page is how to access the member database. So from the main page, once you log in, you can either view the list of members by state or as a whole project. But this tool can be used if you want to look at other members of in your state, whether it's neighboring offices or local contributors like Extension. If you were hoping to get some local contributor information but don't know who is a member of the project, this is the page that you could reference. So once again, we're on the main page for the Frost Freeze project, and as I mentioned, the guidance forms are really the focus of the website tour today. However, there are more products available in static maps and also on the GIS map interface. So I do encourage you to take some time to visit this website and learn more. So now we're going to go back to the PowerPoint, and Beth is going to walk us through a quick mock situation of how you can use the different tools on the Frost Freeze Guidance Project to make your decisions and also communicate with neighboring offices related to Frost Freeze headlines.
Okay, so here's an example situation for, let's say, this spring, and how your Weather Service office could use the resources available to make decisions about whether or not you intend to issue freeze headlines. In this situation, we're looking at the Grand Rapids, Michigan area. March was unusually warm. You can tell this is fictitious. March was unusually warm, and the Grand Rapids Weather Service office is wondering how this could impact their frost freeze guidance headlines. What are some questions that the office may need to answer? Well, climatologically, when does the last freeze of the spring typically occur? So have we already passed that last freeze date? If there were freezing temperatures, would there be vegetation that is vulnerable? Are neighboring offices going to issue freeze headlines if freezing temperatures are expected? So how could the Grand Rapids office use the Frost Freeze Guidance Project to answer these questions? First, you can check the freeze advisory status map. Are neighboring offices going to issue headlines if temperatures get cold enough? If we look at this example, Grand Rapids could look at surrounding offices around them and see that since neighboring CWAs are green, this means yes, which means if freezing temperatures are going to be in the forecast, they are intending to issue a headline. The other map they can check is the guidance map from local contributors. In this case, the blue means maybe. A guidance of maybe from a local contributor means that some vegetation may have started growing. Therefore, if freezing temperatures are in the forecast, it might be a good idea to issue a freeze headline. What if you don't have input from local contributors in your area when you need it? Well, one thing you could do is go to the project member list and find local contributors in your state. Their email and phone number is typically listed, so you can contact them directly and talk about the guidance options with them. Finally, what about climatology? What is the typical median date of the last spring freeze in Michigan? According to this map, the median date of last spring freeze is in early May. So the fact that it's only March indicates that another freeze is likely. So let's say the office decides that if freezing temperatures are going to be in the forecast, they will, as an office, decide to issue headlines. So now what? Now the forecaster would go and fill out the guidance form on the Frost Freeze Project website for their office. They would select their county, they would put in the rationale for their guidance, and they would submit it so that their guidance and their decision is going to be included on the map. So this project is really only as useful as the input received from the Weather Service and local contributors. And I'm sure you saw from our example maps that there's a lot of locations that still need input from both member groups. So please keep these guidance forms and maps in your region up to date as much as possible throughout the season. Other people are looking at them. And if you know of other potential contributors, whether it be Weather Service or local contributors, please recruit them to join the listserv and get involved.
So this is the current status. We just looked at this on the web page of our freeze advisory guidance forms. So if conditions are changing in your area and you need to submit a new guidance form, please do that. I think we just had a couple submitted in the Tennessee area not too long ago. So please submit guidance forms if conditions represent the need for an advisory. Here is the email for the VIP project if you have any comments or feedback. And at this point, we'd be happy to take any questions that you may have. And just as a reminder, you can either type your question in the question box or you can raise your hand and we can try to unmute your phone. So ask away. Okay, so we don't have any coming up right now, which means we covered everything. Oh, there we go. Very good, no questions. Never mind. Thank you. Thanks. Okay, make sure that there are no other hands raised. Okay.
John, I know that you're on, John I. So are there any comments that you'd like to make?
Let me unmute your phone real quick, sorry.
Yep, I know.
Okay. John, if you want to talk, you are unmuted.
No, I have no comments. Thank you. But I think it's wonderful what you're working on.
Thank you. I see another hand raised. Matthew, I'm going to try to unmute you, but I'm not sure. I believe you have to enter your audio pen, Matthew, which I think I just sent you. So let me see if that allows you to do that. Okay. All right. Well, of course, if you think of any questions, feel free to send us an email. I'll put, once again, the VIP email up there. So if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to contact us. Anything else, Beth?
No, I can't think of anything.
Okay. Well, the recording for this will be up on that training webpage hopefully in the next few days. So if anyone in your office wants to listen, you can point them towards that page. So thank you for attending today, and have a great day.
Yeah. We'll be talking to you soon.